I'm very happy today to continue this series of invitations to musicians from the main program of our festival. And today we'd like to welcome Marcus Schmickler, composer, electronic musician, researcher. Marcus prepared a piece for this special occasion, and he prepared it in a way that he's trying to use the obstacles that occur, that appear, the obstacles which appear when we play virtual, when we cannot be in the same room, when we have to use this media, latency and all the technical problems. He's trying to include them in his musical composition. Marcus is going to play about 15 minutes, and then we have time to chat about his work, about his plans for the festival, and so on. Before we invite him, or before we switch over to his studio in Cologne, where he's sitting and where he's going to perform, I'd like to say whoever is able to open this live stream on different digital devices, like a computer, a telephone, whatever you have, try to open it on different devices and listen to the sound coming from different places. That's gonna even make the experience bigger. Here's Marcus Schmickler with his music for us. Yeah, thank you, Marcus. It was quite impressive. We actually had 3 devices running here, and it made perfect sense to have different sound sources.
Oh, nice, good.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There are some questions that go through my mind since I know that we're going to meet here and talk a little bit. And the first one actually refers to what we heard just now. We saw you in the beginning, saw you record some little things on your table. How do you come up with the sounds you're using? Does that matter? Is that a strong thing that where the sound source is? Because then anyway you process it through the computer, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to create sounds that produce a texture kind of thing, that this texture works quite well with the delays between the different devices, rather than if I had like more discrete signals that would just create an echo. But when you have this kind of texture with the keys, for example, or with multiplied versions of rattling of the violin and so on, and also with the glass sounds, then it produces a texture that that will fill the gaps, the time gaps between the different streams quite well, and that's the reason.
It's interesting because for me, as not knowing so much about the technical aspects of this, how this works, is I couldn't like find the fiddle or the glass or the keys in the sound anymore. Like after I heard it first time, it was just gone in all this huge sound.
Yeah.
So then I thought. In some of your work, I remember the album from 2011, Politics of Frequencies. You were using sonification, meaning that you transform data, not musical data, into sound. Is that also something that resolves in a certain sound quality that you don't get on another way?
Well, not on a sound quality necessarily, more in terms of the form or the structure, I would say, of the music. Because first, when you think about a sonification, you have to come up with some kind of idea what a good mapping for a sound is. Does it make sense to translate say one stream of data into a specific parameter of a musical element, and then find a kind of a time base that makes sense for it. And the surprising element or the surprising aspect of in sonification is more regarding the form, because then you all of a sudden discover things that are non-human controlled or not, driven by an aspect of a decision of a musician or of a composer. So that there you more in terms of the timing development, you get more aspects, not necessarily in the quality of the sound. I mean, it's part of the same thing, of course, but
but that means that when you use different data, you get different structures. And you can like determine
use different data and apply the same sound mapping to them if the data allow it, and you will have a similar sound quality, but you end up with a different form or a different musical structure of it, if you want.
And that's not necessarily something you can determine in advance, but you experience during during playing or working with the sounds.
Yeah, I mean, it goes a little bit hand in hand. So it is also a question what drives the aspect of the sonification. If you're interested in, say, more like a scientific screening of the data, then it makes absolutely sense to have like a very thorough and solid kind of ongoing type of parameter mapping for the sounds, so that you don't confuse, the sound aspect with the parameter or the data input aspect. So it makes sense to always use the same kind of method to sonify your data in order to be able to actually hear what is in the data, which is the goal in when you do a scientific kind of sonification, which is not necessarily the case when you work with data and in an only musical sense, but it depends a little bit on the concept that you have for using data.
Yeah, I'm so curious because when I read a little bit about the piece you were to perform in the festival now in July, you would also use sonification of data which is connected to Monheim, like data from traffic or from things. And I wonder that I would be very curious to hear if that actually gives an impression of being there, or just a sound which kind of connects to the city just because it comes from that data. I can hardly imagine that this would be a sensual impression.
Yeah, well, usually you would probably produce a setting where you, for example, use a data, for example, a set which goes from a long period of time and you squeeze it into only a couple of minutes. Then you get an acoustic overview, let's say over a year, of say a specific aspect of the boat traffic on the Rhine, let's say. If you want to have like a life-size kind of experience, then you would use the same tempo as in real time, which could be like a fun aspect to do. But usually you want to measure something and you use the advantage that you don't have to do it in real time, but you squeeze a longer part of a certain period into a shorter period, so that you get an overview of what is going on. I mean, there's so many different ways of how you could approach it, but I kind of understand what you mean. And I guess one of the ideas would also be that you get an impression. If you know the area very well, or a certain, for example, the boat traffic. If we stick with the boat traffic, you would know that at a certain time, certain boats appear just from your experience of living there. Then you would probably be able to also find this in the data and in the sonification then of
well, I would be really curious to hear that and to experience if I can connect with that. I don't know if everybody who's listening to us or watching us here knows about the piece you proposed for the festival. Actually, Marcus proposed a big, I don't know if I can say theatrical, you have to correct me, but it has very performative aspects. A big piece for performed outside at the bank of the River Rhine, working a lot with distance, with things that are far away on the other shore of the river, which are very close, but also with people who are coming from the city and people who are coming from very far away. So all these aspects are in the piece. I mean, I'm not sure if you're still going to want to play that piece next year, but still, I thought that is a very interesting approach for opening of this festival.
Yeah, I mean, the idea for that also, and I hope it's not going to be theatrical. I hope I would say like I'm really interested in the sound aspect of it in terms of, and it kind of needs certain elements that might, you know, appear theatrical, but I'm not so much interested in the performative aspect, but rather in the sound aspect of hearing things from far away, but also being able to connect to things that are very close by, and juxtapose these elements of sounds that come from afar and others that are you know, right in front of you, basically. So and this idea for this actually emerged in a kind of in a talk with you know, the curators for the festival, that I thought like, yeah, it's something that I would really like to experience once we're at this interesting site at the river, which is, you know, historically so loaded, but also has this vast nature right in front of you, to use that somehow and trying to, you know, address it also in terms of, you know, acoustics and you know, the sonic aspect of what it sounds like if you have a sound quality from very far away, and also, you know, as I said, from close by.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there are so many other aspects. We don't have enough time to go into all of them. And there's just one more thing. I'm sorry if I used this term theatrical. I just didn't come up with
no problem. That's
this is the spatialization of the sound. So having the sound on different as we experience it now. You know, we had the sound from my laptop. We had the sound from the speakers here. So this, I imagine, must be a big thing also in this piece on the Rhine, of course. And this is something I find, like when I follow what you do, I find this as a common theme, maybe not theme, but something that reappears in your work.
Yeah, that's right. I haven't played a stereo concert for a very long time, and I really enjoy working with the spatial attributes of a performance and of sound. For example, you know, if you send sound across the river, which is something like at between, say, 300 and 400 meters, then it takes a second only for the sound to cross the river, you know, more or less. So because the speed of sound is 340 meters per second, and it just takes a while until it crosses. And these are, of course, musical challenges, how to deal and how to address with it, that aspect, you know, by having different elements playing together and to kind of consider these distances into the musical experience somehow, but also being able to it's something that seems so rare that we are able to somehow try to address the element of sounds from very far away into a musical performance. And I'm really curious what it will sound like. It's also something that you cannot rehearse so extensively, or that you have to basically just do and see, you know, what you can come up with pretty much right before the actual concert.
Yeah, and it's interesting that now in the situation we find ourselves in, which we couldn't expect, this aspect of distance becomes completely new meaning, because we cannot meet. Right. We have to. We are distant. So all this somehow seems not. Well, I don't find the right word now, but you know, it's so interesting to have that. To experience that now, that this is actually in this case or in this context, I wanted to ask how the situation is in Cologne now for you, because I guess that everything in your professional life also changed dramatically through the quarantine and the epidemic problems, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, since I'm kind of a composer, performer type of musician, I have, some performances were just canceled, or some of them were delayed, which is really great, like the Monheim Festival as well, but also others who decided to postpone it, some with a date that is already in autumn, where you think, okay, we hope that at least in autumn we can all be back on track, which is kind of really a little bit unclear to me right now. But then also I have quite a bit of studio work still to do, have to get things ready for, non-performance related stuff, but also, recording and composing, which have like deadlines and so on. But of course, there's so many aspects that have changed. The timings, the frequency, how much you get work done, and so on. So, yeah, it's definitely been very interesting so far.
Interesting is the right word here. That's for sure. I mean, what we start to come up with is really new ways to work together. I'm thinking now of my little community in Monheim, my friends in Monheim, where we started an internet radio, and we search for possibilities to work collaboratively on the digital media, not only produce something that somebody else could consume, but like to meet and to really produce things together. So in a way, it's a possibility to research, new ways of working also.
Yeah, well, at some level it probably is, but also I think there's also a little bit of an optimism involved here, because I think certain things have already been, tested or have already been tried. I mean, it's I'm a little bit more skeptical if these kind of challenges are all for good, or I mean, there's also, of course, certain aspects that doing everything digitally without connecting in the same room and so on, that might stay and so on, that are maybe not so great. So I'm kind of a little bit more neutral to skeptical if these kind of changes or these kind of things that are the kind of followings from, or the results from these global aspect, if they are really that interesting also. I mean, web radios have existed before, and this kind of solidarity that a lot of people think of, I'm kind of wondering if there's really so much more solidarity right now everywhere, or if it will be even worse once this is over with, in terms of the solidarity, when we get back to normal, that everyone thinks, so, okay, now I have to get back on track with whatever I was doing before. So I'm kind of a little bit more neutral, and we'll see what's going to come up once this is over.
Yeah, I actually have to be there with you. I'm not so optimistic in this part, but still, it feels like we are not stuck with, we cannot do anything. So at least we can.
That's right. Yeah, no. Yeah, we should definitely use this time to be productive, or maybe even for contemplation whenever you can afford it. It's also a good time to maybe learn something that you always wanted to learn and never found the time to, or so. I think that is also a nice opportunity.
Yeah, Marcus, thank you so much for taking the time to being with us here tonight.
Thanks for having me
this evening. I wish you all the best. Stay healthy, and I hope that we can meet before next year in Monheim.
I'm sure we can.
All the best.
Looking forward to.
Ciao, Marcus.
Bye-bye.